Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our program will begin in 2 minutes. Also, please take this opportunity to silence all communication devices. Our program will begin in 2 minutes. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Rochester Hills, Michigan Mayor and U.S. Conference of Mayors President Brian Barnett.
Well, good morning again. I know we are moving quickly through a third very busy day. Are you still with us out there, mayors? Yeah. Great. You know, today has been just, I think, maybe another sort of snapshot into what the life of a mayor is all about. We started by talking a little bit about new opportunities and learning a little bit about esports, and then transitioned to a very serious and one of the more poignant panels I've seen in 13 years of this organization and as being a mayor. The conversation that you just saw Mayor Lightfoot lead us through. I know that's much like the day of a mayor, isn't it? It's not very predictable. It changes pretty quickly and requires us to be pretty nimble. And we're going to continue on that nimble path today as we've got quite a few more interesting topics to discuss. And ultimately, we need to stay on schedule so that we can leave on time for our visit with the president and our visit with the cabinet members over at the White House. So we want to move now to a very special part of our program and another part of the United States Conference of Mayors where money is leaving the stage and ending up out in the pockets of mayors in this community. You know, last year, the United States Conference of Mayors Dollar Wise program launched its Mayor's Economic Mobility Campaign. And we want to welcome to the stage my friend and neighbor to the south, Columbus Mayor Andy Ginther. He's the chair of our Council on Metro Economies and the New American City. He's going to talk to us and give us a little bit of an update before we get to the Dollarwise program about some of the reports he's made in the New American City. So my friend, Mayor Andy Ginther.
Good morning, and thank you, President Barnett. It is great to be with you this morning to talk about some exciting work that's taking place with the Economic Mobility Campaign. We're excited to release our first Economic Mobility Survey and Report. 53 cities responded to our survey and provided information and best practices. And here are some exciting examples of what the great leadership and vision of mayors around our country. In Denver, Mayor Hancock raised the minimum wage to $12.87 an hour starting January 1st this year. In January of 22, wages will rise to $15.87. This alone will benefit 90,000 residents in Denver and impacting the economic vitality of their families. In New York City, Mayor de Blasio has expanded his accelerated Study Associates Program, ASAP, that helps 25,000 students annually finish their associate's degree in 3 years. In Orlando, Buddy Dyer, his Minority and Women Entrepreneurial Business Assistance Program provides financial assistance for up to $40,000 for businesses in the Paramore neighborhood. And to prepare her community's youth, Dayton Mayor Nan Whaley adopted universal pre-K through Preschool Promise, having a huge impact on early childhood in her community. Mesa Mayor John Giles expanded his Mesa K-Ready program, and in Providence, Mayor Jorge Arosa, One Providence for Youth removes barriers to advancement for young people. And the great mayor of Houston, Sylvester Turner, gives real economic opportunity to returning citizens through his Turnaround Houston for Reentry, Justice, and Inclusion. And in Columbus, our Columbus Women's Commission has launched the Columbus Commitment, Achieving Pay Equity, which works with employers to help close the gender and race-based pay gap. We already have 250 adopters who are embracing and looking at gender and pay equity in their companies. Our economic mobility campaign will encourage mayors to form comprehensive economic mobility strategies to serve more residents and garner even more public support. Cities in the report also identified the top 6 federal actions needed to promote economic mobility. They were expand workforce training, subsidize universal child care, subsidize universal pre-K, support small business development and entrepreneurship, expand the federal EITC and child tax credits, and increase the federal minimum wage. The top 2 state actions were to promote criminal record sealing and expungement for nonviolent crimes and to eliminate state preemption laws. The report contains much more information that we hope is helpful to you. So we ask you to join the Mayor's Economic Mobility Campaign to help improve the lives of your residents. And we want to thank Bank of America for all of their support in this critically important work in our communities. You can sign up for the campaign at usmayors.org/Dollarwise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Ginther, and thank you for the work that you continue to do on the council. We certainly appreciate it. So now we're pleased to present this year's Dollarwise Economic Mobility Innovation winners, made possible through the campaign's founding sponsor, Bank of America. As Mayor Ginther indicated, promoting economic mobility covers a broad array of programs. He just mentioned many of them. And each winning city that you'll meet in just a few moments will receive a $10,000 award. So please welcome our first winner, my good friend from just down the road, Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan, to describe his winning program. Mayor Duggan.
Well, I want to thank Bank of America for this, but the Bureau of Labor Statistics says that the unemployment rate in this country is 3.5%. And while that's true, it doesn't count the fact that millions of adults have dropped out of the workforce and aren't being counted at all. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but one of them is the frustration in trying to find a job overcoming criminal records. In the city of Detroit, we can't afford to leave folks behind. And so we've had great success at getting our employers to hire returning citizens, but we ran into all kinds of expungement issues. And so now what we have done is hire 3 full-time attorneys to act as the lawyers for these men and women who want to clear their record. And it isn't just about employment. When you think about what we do, whether we stigmatize people or celebrate them turning around their lives, I'll just tell you one story of a fellow who came to one of our expungement fairs last month. 40 years old, tells me his story. When he was 20, he was convicted of a B&E of a house. He's now married, has kids, has a good job. I said, why are you worrying about expungement now? He said, I hadn't given it a thought. He says, until last week, my son's 5th grade class was going on a field trip, and I put in to be a chaperone. And they did a background check. And they wouldn't let me chaperone my son's field trip. And he says, it was a very painful and embarrassing conversation I had with my son. He says, I'm here because I'm going to chaperone my son's 6th grade field trip. These are the kinds of support that we have to have. And with what we're doing, we're making progress. The Michigan legislature is getting behind us to expand expungement, Republicans and Democrats. And with the support today, we'll be able to move that program a little bit further. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Our next winner is Boston Mayor Marty Walsh, a familiar face around this conference for many years. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mayor Marty Walsh.
Thank you very much, President Barnett, and I want to thank everyone. A big reason why we took on child care is because the challenges facing our young families in the city of Boston. The child care is more than that. It's also a gender wage gap. It's part of the early childhood education, and it's entrepreneurial in low-income communities, especially for women of color. Child care touches every single thing we're trying to do, increasing equality and rebuilding our middle class in the city of Boston. That's why we have different policies working together in our Office of Women's Advancement, our Economic Mobility Lab, our Small Business Outreach, in the Elections Department, helping get the data on our city censuses so we can better track this information. This solution draws on the strength of city government. We can't use every single dollar to pay for everyone's child care, but if we train and help capital to home-based providers in our communities, we can grow affordable, high-quality options that families can trust. We believe in the city of Boston that the children's future is the most important part of our city and growth. We have to realize that children are the strength of our communities right now, from the local community to the federal government. We have to treat child care as a central economic challenge of our time. That's the conversation I want to help start, and I want to thank all the mayors that are here today, and thank the United States Conference of Mayors for putting on another great winter meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Marty. Marty's got that thick, enviable Boston accent. You almost run subtitles when he speaks just to know what he's saying. Thanks, Marty. Appreciate that. Our third winner is a city that my brother and sister-in-law live in. It's a fantastic place, certainly on the move. He's a great mayor, and we appreciate him. We want to congratulate and welcome to the stage the mayor of Chattanooga, Mayor Andy Burke.
Thanks, Mayor, from one kind of accent to another. Ronald Bristow, a Chattanooga pastor with a criminal record, says that when he went into prison, that cell phones were barely a thing, and when he came out, they were essential to everyday life. We know that in Chattanooga, people need access to digital opportunities, what we call digital equity. Chattanooga has the fastest, cheapest, most pervasive internet in the world, a fiber optic system that provides up to 10 gigabit capacity at every home and every business in our city. I'm going to say that again, every home and every business in our entire city. We spent a lot of time trying to make sure that people have the skills to use that. What that means is Tech Goes Home, which has done this for almost 5,000 people in our city. We will use this award to help people like Ronald who have been recently incarcerated get those digital skills they need to participate in our growing economy and have a high quality of life. Thanks so much to DollarWise.
Our fourth DollarWise Innovation Grant winner is Syracuse Mayor Ben Walsh. Now, the mayor couldn't be with us today, but we want to congratulate him and the city of Syracuse for that award. Let's give them, City of Syracuse and Mayor Walsh, a round of applause. This next winner is a great friend who I've gotten to know. She's a newer mayor, but I actually knew her when she was a city council member in the city of Lincoln. She's doing some great things in that city. Our next winner of the DollarWise Award, Mayor Lyrian Gaylord Baird of Lincoln, Nebraska. Mayor Baird.
Good morning. Thank you, President Barnett, and thank you, all of you, for this warm welcome to my first winter conference. I am Mayor Lyrian Gaylord Baird from Lincoln, Nebraska, the middle of everywhere. I am deeply grateful to be here among all of you who are successfully advancing the economic mobility and prosperity of your residents. My city believes in inclusion and has a long history of welcoming immigrants and refugees. In 2016, Lincoln resettled more refugees per capita than any other city in the US, and we work hard to remove barriers to their successful integration into American life. Barriers such as the fact that recent data indicates that many of our new American residents have post-secondary education but are not employed in their fields of expertise. Lincoln will use DollarWise innovation funds to implement a career ladder project to help our community members move out of entry-level and part-time positions and return to the highly skilled careers that they enjoyed in their home countries. Thank you to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the DollarWise campaign, and Bank of America for this recognition and support, and many thanks to my fellow mayors for your inspiring efforts to make all of our cities more welcoming and inclusive.
Great. Thank you, Leanne. Our next economic mobility winner is a longtime mayor and great friend to the conference, Bridgeport Mayor Joe Ganim. Mayor Ganim.
Mayor, thank you. And I'd like to thank the U.S. Conference of Mayors and Bank of America for this grant and for recognizing the importance of reentry for returning citizens. And to you, President Barnett, for establishing the subcommittee on reentry for the first time in, I think, in the conference's history. And we had a great meeting on that yesterday. There's over 600,000 individuals return from prison every year into our cities and towns, facing barriers and creating, I believe, one of the most pressing issues for us as mayors to address. We have an obligation to assist in reducing the barriers for returning citizens back into our cities and towns. And I know some of those barriers firsthand, in that I'm one of those returning citizens. With this grant, we're going to start a new program in Bridgeport called Breaking the Barriers for Reentry, targeting individuals 6 to 12 months before they leave prison and focusing on obtaining official identifications, financial literacy and banking, pardon and clean slate information, and opportunities for a decent job. As I like to reflect, even if that decent job has the opportunity to return as mayor of the largest city in their state. It's my hope that by identifying these needs early, that will help to create positive and lasting change for all of our returning citizens in all of our cities and towns. Again, thank you so much for this opportunity and allowing us to launch this program. Thank you.
It's a powerful passion, and I was happy to do it, Mayor Ganim. Get a chance to talk to Mayor Ganim about that, and you'll see what can happen. I'm just really honored, Joe. Congratulations. Our seventh and final award winner is generally voted the best dressed mayor and truly is one of the wisest mayors in the conference. Someone you should certainly seek out with your most complicated program because he has at least an opinion and probably a solution. He's a great friend, Mayor Christopher Cabaldon of West Sacramento. Mayor Cabaldon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I should have dressed better today. And thanks so much to Bank of America for their support of economic mobility efforts in my community and in communities around the country. But what if you could bank social capital? What if the activities that young people do outside of the classroom counted? What if they mattered for employers and colleges in ways that they never had before? If you volunteered at Habitat for Humanity for 4 weeks in a row, developed carpentry skills, developing the soft skills to succeed at work. If you participated in a conflict resolution workshop to help keep young people out of gangs. If you prepared for college with a College Success Summer Workshop. If you do the things outside of school that matter for employment and for college success. What if you could do that in a way that provided a validated credential, just like your high school transcript does? That's what we're doing in West Sacramento as part of the West Sacramento Home Run, which is a wraparound program. 15 years ago, we were here as one of the first cities in America to launch a universal preschool program, high-quality preschool. 10 years, we were here for a universal program for college, paid internships for students in college and career pathways. Now we are launching a system of digital badges that will validate for colleges and for businesses the skills, experiences, and achievements that young people accrue outside of the classroom so that they matter. And we're leading the way by granting the very first ever city scholarship starting next year that will award directly scholarship funds for young people taking advantage of and participating in volunteer activities in the community that build their skills. Economic mobility means uplifting the skills and the potential and the pathways for all people in our communities, and we're really proud to be able to be at the vanguard with many of you in this room in the digital badging movement. So thanks so much to Bank of America for your support, and thanks so much to the Conference of Mayors for recognizing and helping to uplift and accelerate this work.
So what you've just seen is 7 communities walk away with $10,000 of communities the size of Detroit and Boston with 600,000 or 700,000 people to Mayor Cabalden's town of West Sacramento with, I think, around 60,000. There is certainly an opportunity for your community to participate, showing off your innovation and being recognized and rewarded for it. And of course, these incredible grants through the Dollar-Wise Mayor's Program for Economic Mobility Campaign would not be possible without the longstanding support of the Bank of America Charitable Foundation. So please welcome to the podium Steve Fitzgerald, ESG Program Director for the Bank of America Charitable Foundation. Steve, thank you and the Bank of America Foundation for making all of this innovative work possible. It is so much appreciated. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve.
Thank you, Mayor Barnett. Really appreciate that. And congratulations to all of these really outstanding organizations. I think you heard just how this deployment of our philanthropic capital can really help individuals at their point of need. At Bank of America, we're committed to help make financial lives better to those who we serve. We know that when we bring our resources in partnerships with the great cities across our country, we can make a difference. And when individuals thrive, our business benefits as well. As a founding sponsor, as you heard, Bank of America has supported the Dollar-Wise and really now the evolution of the economic mobility grants for over a decade. And now nearly 90 cities have participated. And each one of them has a story equally as powerful as you heard this morning. And we recognize that when we partner with great organizations like the U.S. Conference of Mayors, like the cities in this room, we can truly make a difference. Forming partnerships with organizations across the country really is essential to help us deliver important financial tools. I would be remiss if I did not mention that there's a terrific partnership that we have with Sal Khan and the Khan Academy, delivering a wealth of information through our bettermoneyhabits.com website. If you've not had a chance to take a look at that, I ask you to do that. It really could be a terrific resource for the various programs that you have. Providing resources like that to individuals at their point of need truly is at the core of our economic mobility strategy, and I know it's at the core of your strategies as well. So thank you for the continued partnership. I'd like to especially thank Mayor Barnett, Tom Cochran, Dave Gatton from the U.S. Conference of Mayors and his staff, and lastly, thank you to the cities that were recognized today. It's through these programs that you listened for a brief moment that we know that you are changing lives. Your work is tremendously meaningful, and we're honored to support it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. You know, it's fantastic, and I want to just remind all of you, since we've been talking a little bit about money recently, thank you all for the fantastic response for yesterday's 100 Mayors Who Care program. I just want to remind you, we think all of you saw the three great nonprofits. Over 100 of you voted to select the winner. And just want to remind you that you can still contribute. I just want to read this. There's still time to contribute the $100 if you haven't done so already. And I really would love to have a great showing, this sort of inaugural event of the 100 Mayors Who Care. Open up your app. Click on the Thursday Mayors and Business Leaders Breakfast agenda item. Click the donate button at the bottom of the page. Again, you can do it all the way through this weekend. So thank you so much for contributing to this local Washington, D.C. area nonprofit. We really want to leave a legacy, and we appreciate your support in doing that. Now, Mayors, you with me still? We're running hard today, and we're going to pivot again to something I think you'll find really refreshing. This next panel is going to be incredible. You're going to hear from mayors and youth on how we can all work together to keep young people engaged. And if you're not already tapping into some type of youth council or the youth of your community, I think you're going to get some great lessons on why you should make that an absolute priority upon your return back home. To lead these important conversations, I welcome the chair of the Youth Involvement Task Force and a great friend for a long time, Gresham Mayor Shane Bemis. Mayor Bemis.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you, President Barnett, for the introduction. Also, thank you for your leadership and your commitment to America's youth. Over the past year, it has been an honor to help the U.S. Conference of Mayors Task Force on Youth Involvement, and I've had the pleasure of watching America's mayors lead at the edge of innovation, inviting young voices in our communities to meaningfully influence the decisions and the services that will impact them for years to come. Our Executive Director, Tom Cochran, and staff at the conference, with the energy and dynamism of the students from around the country, are the reason why we have been so successful. But we're just getting started, mayors. This past summer in Los Angeles, we held the first ever Mayors National Youth Summit. With our friend, Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti, as our welcoming co-host, we had 28 mayors and 128 youth leaders from 58 cities in 25 states. This youth-led, youth-organized summit brought much-needed action and energy around the issues that our youth are passionate about. Out of the conference, we had three main areas of focus. One was convening youth town halls, how we as mayors empower our youth in a way that fosters collaboration, while also understanding that our youngest residents want action now. Two, voter engagement and registration, how we partner with our nation's largest populations to enfranchise them into today's political system, especially in an era where so many young people have the feeling that we have left them behind. And number three, we had a robust conversation around local youth councils and how mayors can work with the youth in their cities to have equity in the advancement of policy and the delivery of services. This was the first convening of its kind in the history of this distinguished conference, and it marked a strong commitment from America's mayors to the young people we represent and to the future that they represent. So much came out of this summit last summer, which is why I'm pleased to announce this morning that we will be holding our second annual Mayors National Youth Summit, July 18th through 21st in Portland, Gresham, Oregon. I, along with Topeka Mayor Michelle De La Isla and Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler, are excited to co-host this amazing gathering and hope you will join us this summer. And now I'd like to share a quick video with you about this upcoming summit.
The ancient Greeks are credited with a fitting proverb. Society grows great when old people plant trees whose shade they will never sit in.
Everything begins here and grows.
The only time change has ever come is when it comes from the young people.
And while some people don't really want to engage in government and politics, there are many like us here that do.
This is a chance for us to have authentic conversations with our mayors.
You know, if you don't have your young people in your administration, you are not effectively governing.
Mayors are your partners. We live at the most local form of government. We welcome your voice.
You can be the change that we want and need in America.
We need your help as the mayors to teach us how to push politics from the inside and show us the ropes.
we say to Washington, quit fighting, stand up, and come together like the youth of this nation is coming together in a bipartisan way.
We deserve to be part of those conversations. All of our voices need to be included.
We know that the future of our country rests on the voices in this room.
This conference has shown how we can talk to each other.
I've never been more confident our youngest residents will tackle our most vexing issues with expediency and decency. And I'm eager for you to clutch the reins of power.
All right, it's going to be a great time in the Northwest. Yeah. Beyond this exciting event, we have obviously a lot of great work ahead of us, and I highly encourage all mayors to join the task force so that young people in our cities have a seat at the table and a microphone at the table and a chance to further realize their potential as our nation's leaders. There's some information regarding the summit in front of you and at the Conference of Mayors booth in the lobby, and please save the date, reach out to the Conference of Mayors staff for details and how to join. I'm also very pleased to announce the release of the Conference of Mayors' first national youth poll conducted with Zogby Strategies on millennials and Generation Z. The Zogby team polled young people from across the country to build data on policy leanings, behaviors, and values. The poll results are in front of you, and I'd like to invite now at this time John Zogby to join us on stage to talk about some of those highlights. Mr. Zogby.
For having me at this conference. This is particularly exciting for me on a personal basis because I have been polling and doing focus groups among young people now since 9/11. And I want to assure you that the results briefly that I'm going to share with you are not counterintuitive in any way, that in fact it's just merely a growth of what we've been seeing for the last 2 decades, and that number 2, you are doing the right thing by forming these youth councils because these are not just an interesting bunch of kids who happen to be different. They are 40% of your workforce. They're about to be 40% of the electorate, and these and their values are here to stay. These are what you're going to see are permanently emblazoned in their minds. Let's get right to some of the highlights of the survey. First of all, the methodology. It is indeed a scientific random probability sample. It was done last month. 1,000 18 to 29-year-olds, likely voters. And the margin of error of the results we're going to share with you are plus or minus 3.2. So which of the following best describes what influences you to vote? Very importantly, 60% said that they're motivated out of civic duty. Only 12% cite tradition or family influence, and only 15% need candidates to excite them. The numbers are a solid majority across the board who said civic duty. Now, what best represents your view on whether or not your vote counts in the upcoming presidential election? Pay close attention to this in an age of technology. Born into a nation with disputed elections and hacking technology, these young voters are not very sanguine about their vote. The sample is actually of likely voters, but 36% of them still feel less trusting of the results of elections, and only 38% feel that every vote counts. The skepticism is across the board among sub-demographic groups of these young people. This is why your youth councils are so essential. It's to re-energize and get them to believe. The 2 top issues that will affect your decision on who you're going to vote for in November, overall the top issue is the economy and jobs, 29%. Followed closely by access to health care at 25%. The top 5 are rounded out by education and student debt, global warming, and immigration. Importantly, young men more likely to support or to cite the economy than women. However, women more likely to cite health care than men. And other issues that came up, just top of mind, 16% crime and gun violence, 14% poverty, closing the wealth gap, protecting civil rights, especially among minorities, 14%, rebuilding the nation's infrastructure, 11%. That's top of mind. We didn't offer a choice. There's a greater intensity then to those feelings. Regarding the economy and job outlook, do you feel that? Only 19% felt that the worst of the financial crisis of a decade ago is behind them. The largest plurality, 30%, say that they're still in the headwinds and that it is hard to plan their future. And another 28% suggest that their sentiments depend on who is elected president. On this issue, partisan reigns supreme. 15% of Democrats, 29% of Republicans expressing optimism. 37% of Democrats, 20% of Republicans expressing pessimism. Do you disagree or agree or disagree that global warming is a major threat to human life on Earth as we know it? 80% agree that it is a major threat to human life on Earth as we know it. 52% strongly agree with that. Young men, 76%. Women, 82%, are in unison on that. 60% of women strongly agree with this proposition. Gen Z and millennials, those 18 to 25 and 25 to 29 in the survey, speak with one voice on this, as do all races. I have done countless focus groups all over the country and have had my clients viewing those focus groups, and they come, these are political parties, these are business people, these are candidates, and they say to me, oh, I had no idea that they feel so strongly about the environment. Understand that they do. Those numbers are not an aberration. At the same time, which of the following statements best describes your stance on how to address global warming? By 3 to 1, young voters agree with the statement that the climate crisis warrants bold measures versus the 21% who reject strong action because of the costs to act. This sentiment is shared by men and women, born-again evangelicals, and I can tell you after 2 decades of polling born-again evangelicals, today's kids are not your grandfather's evangelicals. They have they're conservative, but a completely different set of priorities. Hispanics, African Americans, enough to say the strong feeling is across the board for action. In light of Washington gridlock, what do you believe states and cities' role should they play in addressing global warming? In the absence of strong action, 74% of the sample agrees that states and cities should play either a large role or somewhat large role in attacking global warming. Which of the following forms of legislation do you think are most likely to curb the recent wave of gun violence? Choose all that apply. You could see what we offered there. Guns, gun violence is the second defining issue for this age cohort. You need to understand that these kids in this sample, some of them were not even born when Columbine occurred. This is their lives, and they want this to end. These young voters were asked to check off what they felt would be the actions most likely to curb gun violence. Overall, 45% selected enacting universal background checks. That includes 52% of young women, 50% of born-again evangelicals, 47% of all whites, 41% of non-whites. Second place were red flag laws, and the other choices, federal law mandating smart technology, Legislation allowing teachers to carry at 17%, banning all firearms 11%, nothing at all 8%. Do you own a firearm? Needless to say, at this age, you have smaller than the average. Generally, it's about 36, 38% of adults who possess firearms. What's interesting is if you're going to red states versus blue states, and you see that 57 to 60% of adults in red states own a firearm, 35, 38% in blue states do, but this is well below that. Region plays a factor among young people in gun ownership. Only 13% in the East, 20% in the West, but 25 and 32% respectively in the Central Great Lakes region and the South. Have you a relative or friend who's been directly affected by gun violence? 3 out of 10 say they've had a relative or friend who's been directly affected by gun violence. 67% do not. But African Americans, look at those numbers, 44%, progressives, 42%, report notably higher than the overall when it comes to having a friend or a relative. Regarding any gun violence in your community, how safe do you feel? 2/3 report that they feel safe in their community regarding the issue of gun violence. Nearly 3 of 10, 29%, do not. But regarding those who feel safest, Republicans and whites. On the flip side, those who feel less safe, African Americans, 45%, Democrats, 39%. Obviously, there's a tremendous overlap on African Americans and Democrats. Which statement best describes your attitude about the future? A plurality, almost half, are optimistic about their job prospects and social relationships in a fast-changing world. 42% are concerned about what the future holds for them. Men are slightly more optimistic than women. Those with a valid passport are more optimistic. 43% of those without a passport report having concern about the future. And that is it. And I have a million questions to answer, and maybe you have 100,000 to ask, but I'm not sure if I'm allowed to do any of that. Am I done? Okay. Very subtle. Thank you very much.
All right, well, good morning again. We brought some of our powerful youth leaders from across the country here today to really share with you what they're able to do in their communities and what they're doing not only in their local communities, but what they're doing on a nationwide basis. And I know you're really going to enjoy this time, some pretty powerful speakers that are doing really meaningful work. With that, I would like to introduce the co-chair of the Youth Involvement Task Force, Mayor Michelle De La Isla from Topeka, Kansas. Mayor? Yeah, who dat? Thank you for, yes, give her a hand. Yeah, thank you, Mayor, for all of your work that you're doing with the youth, not only again in your community, but across the country. I know you're very passionate about this issue, and we're a natural fit to help us lead this task force. Why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the things you're doing in Topeka with your youth councils?
So we have a pretty interesting structure. Our council is partnered with our economic development arm, and we did it that way because A, there's funding, and it allows for the youth to have various experiences. So they're divided in 3 different branches. They engage with the quality of play sector, they engage with the government sector, and then they're just like all over the place doing social media, inviting young people to learn about the community. So they're very engaged. they work with the council. They have one representative from each district sit with me every quarter. They set their own agenda, and I run the meeting just like if I was running the meeting with any other council member. And then their recommendations, we just work on bringing them back to the council together. The thing that I'm very excited about right now is the fact that the current project that we're on still right now is at our last meeting comprised of learning about gun violence. And the students were very passionate. We invited our federal representatives, we invited our Shawnee County delegation, and we invited every single member of the council so that everybody could have a town hall. And we were a bit disappointed, but we didn't have a lot of representation, but we did have somebody from the state listen to the concerns that they had. Our chief of police was present. The youth asked very pointed, very good questions, and now they are working on developing a resolution that will be presented not only to the council, it will be sent over to the governor, and we will also send it to our federal delegation in DC. And what we would hope is that what the document that they're working on would be something that if other youth throughout the nation are interested in adopting and taking on, that they could do it as well. So it's just exciting to do this in conjunction to them. My house is their house. I feed them. I love bringing them over. But it's wonderful to have their leadership now because it matters now.
That's great. Thank you, Mayor. And now I'd like to introduce the members of the panel who are here. We have Lauren Hogg, who's the co-founder of March for Our Lives. Yeah. We have Jamie Margolin, who's the CEO of 0 Hour. Vickiana Petit Home of the Boston Mayor's Youth Council. Joseph Toma, for the co-founder of Bridge the Divide. And the co-chairs took a little personal privilege, and we brought somebody from each of our youth councils. So from Topeka, we have Bryce Lidke. And from Gresham, we have Jacob Moore. So Bryce, as a leader with Topeka's Youth Council, tell us a little bit about your experience and what it's meant to you and why it's important.
Yeah, so I'll be honest with you guys. Some of you may have heard me tell this story yesterday at our breakout session. When I started out and as I grew up in Topeka, I did not like the city I lived in. My plan was to go through high school, go to college in the city just because my dad worked there, and then get the heck out of Dodge and not look back. And so through the Washburn University in my city, I went through High School Leadership Academy, which was a program that really went in depth about Topeka. We learned the whole history of Topeka. And we really got to look behind the scenes at what the city has going on and the amazing things and the people like our mayor that care so deeply about our youth and about programs that are going on and how we can improve Topeka. So that really sparked a fire inside of me and a lot of my friends. And we decided, you know, we're going to get more involved. We're going to make this our city and not just a city that we all want to leave. And so from that experience, we started getting involved. We talked to the mayor, Matt Pavarnik, who is the CEO of the Greater Topeka Partnership, and just started getting involved. And through that conversation, we actually brought in some people from Boston, their youth commission leaders, and we started having a conversation, how can we get a youth commission started in Topeka? And so last March, we had our first official meeting. And like the mayor said, we're organized in 3 different subgroups. One is focused on government, one is focused on volunteering and getting youth on boards, and the other is focused on outreach and creating events for youth so that others can have that backdoor experience and really see what Topeka has to offer in Topeka.
That's great. Thank you. Jacob, you've been doing some great stuff in Gresham. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so about similar to what he was saying, similar about 4 years ago when I started going to school and living in Gresham, I had no interest in city government and had really no knowledge of what the duty of the mayor was. As you can see me sitting here today, I hope you can see that that has changed. So I started high school, and you know, halfway through high school, as many high school students run into, my parents decided it was about time for me to get a job over the summer. And so I looked around and I found a program called SummerWorks, and it's a program that sets up 16 to 24-year-olds with jobs in the local cities, and it's paid internships. And so I found a job at the city of Gresham, and so I started out in the Department of Human Resources, and that's when I really grew as a person in my city. So I learning from, you know, my peers and learning from the mayor and learning what the city of Gresham really has to offer and how I could take my role and have some leadership. I started volunteering at my local elementary school. I did 2 years with kindergarteners, and my last year was with 4th grade. I started volunteering at the food bank and became an ambassador at my school. And it was a very sad day when that summer ended and I had to go back to school. However, I had the opportunity to come back the next summer and move down the hall to the city recorder. And that summer is where I really grew my partnership with Mayor Bemis. And I gave him a tour of my school. I interviewed him and wrote a school article on him. And that summer, I had the great opportunity to go to the LA Youth Summit, where I met many of the people on this stage with me. Now I'm at Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon, but that didn't change the fact that the city of Gresham, while I was at school, reached out to me and asked me to come here. And I thank you all for giving me the opportunity here. And Mayor Bemis, thank you very much. And so I'm really here to ask you mayors to try to look in, if you don't already, look into youth employment and paid youth employment. Because I'll tell you this, the city of Gresham not only gave me employment, but also gave me the drive and the purpose for civic government.
Oh, great. Thank you, Jacob. Vickiana. Vickiana, you've been really involved with Boston's Youth Council, and Boston does something very unique with the participatory budgeting. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and what are some of the projects that the Youth Council has done with that process?
Yeah, so in Boston, we have pretty big Mayor's Youth Council. There's over 80 students in our council, and we have so many different committees. One of those committees manage our youth participatory budgeting process. In that process, we collect ideas from so many young people across the city. Each year we collect between 300 to 500 ideas, and they're really ideas about how they think this city could be better and how they want to better their own city and how they think the city could help them. And so it's really cool to be able to get to talk to those students and hear their many different perspectives about what's actually going on in this city. And then afterwards, the students on the committees, they look through the ideas, they narrow them down based on feasibility and impact, and then they work with the local city departments to develop project proposals for them. And through that process, they really get to learn about how the city works. They learn about the timing and just how slow things can be sometimes. Yep. And that they learn how to work with they learn how to work with people that are older than them, and they learn how to write project proposals, and they're learning all of these skills, and they're getting involved. And a lot of them, they leave this process wanting to run for office or wanting to work for the city. I actually work for the city now that I'm through with that process, working on the staff for the participatory budgeting process. I started in January. And then after we get all those projects done and those project proposals done, we put it on a ballot and we take it out into the city where youth ages 12 to 22 can vote on this ballot. And these past 2 years, we've been fortunate enough to actually put the ballot on actual ballot paper that you can feed through the machines and stuff. And it's really cool for students because as early as age 12, you're voting. And so you're already acclimated to that. And by the time that you're 16 and you're pre-registering to vote, and by the time that you're 18, you're voting, you're already familiar with this because you've been doing it for the past 6 years. Oops. But yeah, so that's really cool, and you get to learn it in that sense. And it's $1 million of the city's budget. So you can actually make really huge impact on that. And Boston is fortunate enough to be able to allocate that much money to this project. So some of the past things that we funded, buying computers for schools, renovating a school gym, putting those more bike stations around the city for people to bike around if they wish, renovating parks and basketball courts. And on my first year actually on the council, I worked on a proposal for a future media center with technology like 3D printers and the Adobe stuff. just creating a space where young people who don't usually have access to those type of technology can get exposed and see the possibilities for their future. And they're working on implementing that project out right now because it won when it got put on the ballot, thank gosh. And it was really proud, and it's cool to know that in a couple of years, I'll be seeing that space and I'll know that, wow, like I made this happen because because other people wanted to happen, and then I worked on a proposal and worked to make it happen, and it's really cool, and they get to see that, like, hey, I voted for that to happen. I made this happen. And when you contribute something, I think you're more invested in it. You're more likely to stay and to want to put work into it. And it's just an amazing process that I think all of you should look into and see how you can implement it throughout your cities. I know it looks different across many other cities across the country. I know New York, they don't have it youth, but they have it community-wide, and they invest a lot of money in it. And I know some other places, they put it only in schools. So there's so many different ways that you can play around with it, but the idea that we get to choose how our government spends its money, that's huge. That's the future of democracy, I think. And it's awesome to be a part of it at such a young age.
That's great. Thank you. Joseph, no stranger to anybody in this room is the discourse in this nation and the hyper-partisanship that is afflicting this country. And you have an organization called Bridge the Divide. And you're working on with both Democrats and Republicans in some very meaningful way to bridge the divide. Tell us about that.
Thank you for having us here. As you mentioned, it's no secret that our country is potentially more divided than it's ever been before. And so about 3 or 4 years ago, during the height of the 2016 election, a friend of mine in California and myself, I'm from West Virginia, we co-founded this organization called Bridge the Divide that works to bring young people together across these political divisions that we see in our nation today. And this is important for several reasons, and it sort of caught my attention for several reasons. Number one, it's just obvious that it causes gridlock and impedes upon progress that we're making at especially the national level. But then even more importantly, in our personal relationships and our daily lives, we're starting to see new studies coming out showing that within families, politics is causing significant divisions. And then also with friends, and people feel less comfortable to talk about politics than they ever have before. And so that's dangerous. And it's dangerous. I'm a political science student, and I just took a class on authoritarian regimes. And one of the hallmarks of democratic decay is political polarization, because we get to a point where we're no longer able to punish leaders for maybe pushing the envelope or doing something that's out of bounds, because the alternative is so far from what we believe. And so it's dangerous for a democratic institution. So started this organization. We've approached this in several ways, but the most recent project that we're working on that I hope you as mayors can take home to your communities and to your teachers that you have in your towns and hopefully get them involved. So we started a project with another organization called All Sides, and we had funding from Facebook. And we pair classrooms across these distances and divides in the United States, and this includes middle and high school classrooms. And these are for face-to-face conversations on a number of important issues that we should be talking about, including what does it mean to be an American? And so this is a really exciting platform that we just launched last semester. We've had over 240 pairings within 30 states across the country. And so it's mismatch.org. I encourage you, if you think that would be beneficial to your community, to take that to your teachers or your school board and let them know, because I think it's a really important tool, and it's important that young people, have those conversations with people. And, for like myself, being from West Virginia, talking to somebody from California, there's a lot of benefit to that. So I thank you for having us here. Yeah,
that's great. Thank you so much. Don't pay attention to this down
here.
Yeah. All right. Good. All right. Now we'll have Jamie Margolin, who's the CEO of 0 Hour. It was no surprise, I think, to the nation's mayors in the recent Zogby poll that was released, where 80% of the youth thought that this was the #1 issue facing them. So Jamie, tell us a little bit about why this is the #1 issue and what you were doing, again, nationally to make a difference.
Well, the climate crisis is the #1 issue because it is the grand culmination of all our societal injustices that have been building up for centuries. It's the grand culmination of everything wrong with capitalism, everything wrong with colonialism, everything of racist systems that have been building up. And so if you think about it, everyone who is already oppressed by, is pushed down and marginalized by society feels the worst effects of the climate crisis. So it's not a matter of I don't care about other things and I'm just going to do climate work. It's a matter of if you care about everything else, then you also have to have your eye on the ball in terms of climate change, because that intersects with everything, and you're not going to be able to solve poverty, and you're not going to be able to help people, and you're not going to be able to address any of these other issues without addressing climate change, and you're not going to be able to properly address climate change without addressing any of the other issues it intersects with, because this is a result of our man-made systems, and our man-made systems are extremely flawed. So as a response to this, I co-founded 0 Hour the summer of 2017 after I had been a community organizer in my city of Seattle for a long time, mobilizing and organizing, doing everything I could locally to really get common sense climate legislation passed, not because I simply care about the issue, but because it's a matter of life or death. And if you care about breathing air, you should care about it. And no one was listening to us and taking action. So then I posted on my social media, I'm going to start a youth climate march, who is with me? And I got a response from a few people around the country, and we came together and we organized. Over the course of a year, we built a massive coalition of young people from all around the country and eventually over the world. We are now international. To host youth climate marches in 25 cities around the world on July 21st of 2018. So we mobilized, we marched on Washington for climate action, and we also did a bunch of lobby days around the country, handing demands to our leaders, handing exactly what we needed from them, so that there was no excuse for them not to take action. And so now, ever since that march in 2018, we've just been mobilizing and organizing, doing as much as possible to solve the climate crisis. And we organized a youth climate summit in Miami recently. And now this, going forward, we're working on a new campaign called Vote for Our Future, where we are mobilizing young people to vote and to become engaged in the political process, as well as mobilizing leaders to really take initiative on climate action in their local communities, because right now, this 2020 election, the Earth doesn't have 4 more years to wait in terms of more action, in terms of, we've already are crossing our thresholds in terms of survival, and we don't set the targets, nature and the climate does. And so it's not something that we can make bend for us. We have to bend to what is needed. And so we are going to be, and this is where I call on your help, because we are going to be mobilizing for, we're going to be visiting cities all around the country, especially in the Midwest and the battleground states, and we're going to be hosting events and mobilizing young people and turning them out to vote, because we need their voices heard in these upcoming elections. And that's where we need your help, because we'd like every single city to host its to be working on having youth councils, especially maybe a special task force on the climate crisis, and young people from frontline communities who are feeling the worst impacts of the climate crisis, really, really leading that. And all of you need to be doing outreach into the community, seeing who are the young people who are worst affected by the climate crisis or environmental problems in my constituency, and what can I do to bring them to the table. And we recently launched this campaign of having each city have its own kind of specialized Green New Deal in terms of what, and I know that the Green New Deal has been stigmatized, and people think all sorts of myths about it, and that's a whole nother conversation. But what it means is, and you don't have to call it the Green New Deal, but a comprehensive climate plan in each city that is informed by young people, because this is ultimately a crisis of unfairness. The youth did not cause or create the systems that made this problem, but we are the ones who will be feeling the worst effects of it. And the thing is that by the time we're old enough to be in your shoes, it's going to be too late. And so people often walk up to me and they say, oh, maybe someday when you're a leader, you can solve this. But by then it's far too late. So my call to action to you all is, I'm going to be here for a little bit longer after the conference, is to come up to me and talk to me. We're going to be traveling around the country, so I'd love to talk to you guys on seeing what different events we at 0 Hour can collaborate with you guys on to help you mobilize the young people in your your city, but then also for you guys to be taking action and having real comprehensive climate plans, because this isn't a matter of another issue on the list. This is a matter of survival. And if you do not address the climate crisis, then you are just, and you just try to keep on with other things and try to keep on with business as usual, as if this other thing is just something that you can procrastinate on, then you're arranging the silverware while the house is on fire. And so I need everyone to do absolutely everything they can. And this is going to be something that requires sacrifice and something that requires a lot of times cutting ties with industries that maybe are profitable in the moment, but in the long run are hurting people. So I really encourage you all to do that and take action, because really this is 0 hour to act on the climate crisis. We have no more time.
Right. Lauren, you've been doing a bunch of work with March for Our Lives, both nationally and globally. Tell us about some of the work you're doing with March for Our Lives. In particularly, tell us some of the work you're doing to help policymakers change policy as it relates to guns.
So when it comes to government at all levels, not only federal but also local, I think the way government views youth involvement is as an issue when really it should be viewed as a necessity. I mean, very early on we realized that if there wasn't going to be a chair at the table for us, we were going to build our own table and make people force them to listen to us. So I think with regards to bringing young people into the world of policy to affect gun violence prevention change in the halls of Congress, how we do that is we bring these young people to the table that we've built, especially with communities that have been doing this for many, many years before my organization has existed, especially communities across the country, like Black and brown communities that have been doing this for so long and haven't been listened to by the news media. So it's working in collaboration, working in solidarity with these different communities that we are allowing our organization and other organizations that we're allowed to work with to be able to move forward. Because if we don't work together, we're gonna stay behind and end up just fighting each other, and that's not okay. Because like Jamie said, we'll be rearranging the silverware while the house is burning. Also, really just encouraging young people and showing that they can do this. And I think that's one of the great things about having this panel is that all of us have social medias. There's young people across the country that follow all of us. And being able to see yourself or someone your age doing what we're doing, I think is a good way of starting that. Additionally, I think one of the greatest ways that we've been able to bring young people into different levels of government with involvement towards specifically gun violence prevention is using social media, because I think we mentioned earlier, not this panel, but earlier, it was mentioned that a couple of us were born after Columbine. I was born after Columbine happened, and my whole life I've had social media, so the two things that I've really known about this country and about this world are gun violence is something that is inevitable, and social media is something that is also a huge part of everybody's life. So using those tools that we've been given, the privilege to have for most of our lives, using those to be able to reach out to young people across the country. And I think specifically in local governments, like local cities, having a youth council like Vicki Anna also works for March for Our Lives, having young people like that is incredible because she taught the people who started this organization, she taught us co-founders what it really means to be a youth in the communities across the country. And I think it's very, very important that we're able to communicate that young people are welcome and make sure there's a chair for the young people in your cities so they don't have to build a table of their own.
That's great. Thank you, Lauren. All right, mayors. Well, listen, you know, there's a lot of opportunities that this conference makes available to the nation's mayors. You can go to NYU, you can go to Harvard, you can learn how to be a mayor in all of these institutions. But I'm going to tell you that if you want to be a great mayor, you need to come to Portland on July 18th through 21st and spend the weekend with these young leaders. They're doing incredible work. And I would tell you, every mayor that was with us this last summer in Los Angeles left a better mayor, and they will tell you that to a person. And you will leave a better mayor with a better vision for your community, a more inclusive community, and I guarantee you'll be able to execute on some of these great policy issues that have eluded some of us and some of our predecessors. Bring them to the table, give them a microphone, and I'm telling you, it will be a great, substantial weekend. So please join us July 18th through 21st in Portland. Let's give them all a hand of applause.
It's fantastic to be energized by so many members of our youth community. Thank you, Mayor Bemis and Mayor De La Isla, for your leadership. Mayors, are you still with us? Hey, let me ask you a question. Have you enjoyed the conference so far? You know, we promised, well, that applause goes directly to the staff and the team that have put this conference together. Our only challenge with putting something like this together for you is that we have so much content, so many messages that we want to get, so many things that we think are important that we often run up against the challenges of time. And so just in terms of a housekeeping item, because we have two great sessions left from very important folks that we want to hear from, we are going to move the start of those last best practice sessions from 11:45 to 12:15. So no one needs to leave early in order to get to those sessions, and none of this will impact our visit and our timing for the White House. But just for a quick moment, as we get near the latter stages of our third day, think about all that we've covered as a conference: mass shootings, the 2020 census, cybersecurity, public safety, homelessness, climate change, building the workforce of the future, housing, the arts, technology, engaging the youth, and in just a minute, we're going to talk a little bit more about mobility. We've heard from Mayors Bloomberg and Buttigieg. We've heard from Valerie Jarrett, three amazing nonprofits. We visited the ambassador of Japan at his residence last night. Heard from industry-leading folks like Dr. Frank Luntz and John Zogby about how to message and where our residents are. I hope, and then of course this afternoon we'll meet with members of the cabinet and of course the President of the United States. I hope, as I promised early in my first speech on Wednesday, that you will leave with something of value to apply back home, because we've worked really hard to make that happen. So as I mentioned, we're extremely excited about this next topic, and we've got an individual who I can tell you when I first became mayor was the most popular person at most U.S. Conference of Mayors events. This next session will be an armchair discussion on how we can build transportation access and equity in our cities. And for that discussion, I'll be joined by Anthony Fox, the Chief Policy Officer and Senior Advisor to the President and CEO at Lyft. Now, Anthony Fox, as I said, is no stranger to our Conference of Mayors. He's the former mayor of Charlotte, where so many of us worked with him and met him initially. And later, this is when his popularity really rocketed in this group, he served as the 17th Secretary to the U.S. Department of Treasury from 2013 till 2017. In his current position, Secretary Fox works alongside Lyft's co-founders and executive team at the intersection of transportation policy, technology, and public-private partnerships to expand affordable mobility options and to improve people's lives with the world's best transportation. So please join me in welcoming our former colleague, Mayor and Secretary Anthony Fox. It's just cozy, just like we're in our living room.
Exactly.
Mic'd up with 100 people.
Although you gave me an upgrade, man. Treasury, that would have been good.
Oh, did I say Treasury?
I could have signed the money.
Did I say Treasury?
Yeah, it's all good, man.
You're not supposed to bring that up if I make a mistake. We
No,
talked
it's
about
all
this
good.
backstage. Well, listen, I know when I was a mayor early on, I tell you what, when you're coming to talk about transportation, you wanted to meet with Mayor and then, of course, Secretary Fox. You represented us well. It was great to have a mayor in this position because you know the infrastructure needs that, that cities are dealing with. Now you've got a new position. Pretty popular position, pretty popular company that you're with that makes a lot of noise and is doing a lot of things. And as we talk about the future mobility, I know mayors are really interested in this, not just from what you might think are you know, the traditional reasons about transportation from one spot to another, but as it relates then, we'll get into this, the economic component of it, the social aspects and constructs of what companies like yours are doing to change the idea of quality of life in communities. And so, you know, one of the things that I think is important is the way cities and residents are affected by this. Cities, of course, are at the center of this. Our residents are the reason we do it. And if you haven't heard already, what we've been really focused on, and this is kind of the unique nexus of all this, the 3 I's: infrastructure, innovation, and inclusion. What your company is doing is right square in the center of that. So let me ask you a question. One of the things that we want to talk about with Lyft in particular are some of the major milestones that you've accomplished since joining there, and where do you see rideshare going in the future?
Thank you very much, and it's great to be back here, back home, so to speak. Look, our company is a company that believes in human-centered transportation, and we have done that in a lot of ways that you've seen in cities across the country with programs like the Grocery Access Program, where we're helping to close food deserts by getting people who need to have something other than a bag of potato chips and some, you know, some Entenmann's to get to healthier food choices. We have a Jobs Access Program that's helping people get to work training and to actual jobs that they have. And these are extensions of things that I did and worked on as Transportation Secretary, but they're also very much in the DNA of this company, which is why I chose to join a company that does meet you right in the center of what you just talked about, of infrastructure, innovation, and so forth, and equity.
Inclusion, yeah. Yeah. You know, it's funny to think about how far we've come, and your company and Lyft being right at the center of that. I think I've used this before a few times. You grew up, at least I did, by people saying, you know, don't meet people online and don't get into a stranger's car. Yeah. And now we literally summon strangers online and get into their car. And so much has changed, and we do it regularly. We do it as a part of probably most people got here from the airport because of services like yours. It's really been fascinating at how that's about how that's worked. You mentioned your work as Secretary of Transportation. How does that affect, how did that experience affect what you're doing now with Lyft?
Yeah, well, just like you as a group of mayors and folks around the country are recognizing, transportation is the second most expensive thing people are spending money on in their wallets. And I recognize as Transportation Secretary that the role transportation can play in reducing income inequality is profound, which is why we had an initiative like Ladders of Opportunity. But many of the things that I just talked about, the Grocery Access Program, the Jobs Access Program, the initiative we rolled out just this week with LeBron James and his team to provide bike share to disadvantaged kids. This is all about trying to create a system that allows micromobility, walking, biking, ride sharing where necessary, transit, all these things to converge and for the life of a city to be people-centered.
One of the things we talked about kind of in opening is that having transportation access is crucial for economic opportunity. I remember a session that we had in Rochester Hills. We went to our senior center and we talked about, you know, how does transportation impact you? And we talked about what we saw as the advent of autonomous vehicles. Mm-hmm. And we had a woman stand up in the crowd and said, there was actually a couple negative comments, a couple people who were concerned about it, what it might mean and so forth. And this woman stood up and poignantly said, I can't wait for it. I'm super excited about it. And she said, you don't know this about me, but I'm blind. And she had no indication. And she said, what this technology, what rideshare, where technology is going in terms of mobility is truly going to change her life. So how is Lyft, how is your company supporting some of those transportation access goals and offering mobility choices to folks that haven't really had them in the past?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point. Frankly, on a daily basis, we're providing rides. For example, someone's out late, they've had a few too many. Used to be people would get in the car and take their, no, I'm not, no.
Other people.
Other people, other than you. People used to, unfortunately get in their cars and drive in a very risky situation. And what we're finding is that rideshare has created an entirely new safety valve for people that is convenient, but it also allows us to improve safety on the roadways. To the extent that you're talking also about how autonomy and, for example, closing the gap with folks with disabilities and other ways in which we can transform lives, those are exciting possibilities for us. And we have an active effort in Las Vegas where we have autonomous vehicles on the road. This is something that we are looking at very closely and trying to figure out ways to capitalize. But I think the point is that we're at a stage with transportation where things that we thought were impossible a generation ago are becoming possible. The possibility of creating access points for people who might not have been able to attend a certain school, or might not have been able to take a certain job, or might not have been able to get to a certain destination to buy good food. These things are starting to close. And I think our desire is to work closely with cities to build those partnerships that allow us to enhance it even more. And I just say one other thing about transit. Transit, and you all know this from my record, transit is a critical part of the future of all of our communities. And we do not endeavor to have a competitive relationship with transit. What we really want is to find a way to be harmoniously working towards closing the gaps that transit also closes. So we believe strongly in those partnerships, and frankly, I think the best partnerships are still ahead of us.
That idea of transit, I want to get back to that in a minute, but as you talk about closing the gap for folks that maybe haven't had transportation access as you might think. Mayors, one of the things that we stumbled upon, and that I think is really important for us to think about in Metro Detroit, we don't have great transit. We don't have really much of a transit system, and we've often focused on the last mile as being the real hurdle to doing this. But we talk with our senior citizen community. We find out that statistics show that we outlive the years where generally keys are taken away by about 10 years. We live 10 years past our ability to drive. So we spend so much time focusing about the last mile, not a lot of time focusing on the last decade. If I can teach my grandma to use Lyft, her quality of life, her ability to access things is not she's not closed in. And that's something that has really opened up the eyes of our senior citizen community to be more open to the fact that this isn't some newfangled weird thing that our grandkids do. This is my ability to get to the pharmacy. This is my ability to stay connected with my friends. It's been a great eye-opening even for me.
100%. And I think it's only going to get better for seniors and for people with disabilities. I think for people who are economically challenged, the promise of rideshare, let me give you a couple of statistics. 95% of the time our cars are idle. So if you're low income and you live in an area where you have to have a car to get around, you're putting a bunch of money into an asset that you're using 5% of the time. So if we can take that economic burden and reduce it, $9,000 on average people are spending to buy a car. If you can buy the trips and not have to buy the car, you're going to be in a position where you have more money in your pocket. And so, there is a really strong case to be made that we are partners in reducing income inequality and trying to bridge these economic gaps that we see in our cities.
Yeah. And there's another very interesting side of your company, and that is the opportunity for employment, provide earning opportunities. Talk a little bit about that and the way that increases independence for people as well.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd say roughly 40% of our drivers are folks that come from, minority communities. 40+% of our trips start or end in low-income areas. But the earning opportunity for drivers is really interesting. A couple of factoids about this. 90% of our drivers are working less than 20 hours a week. So there's this view that our drivers are working full-time, but most of them are working around the edges. These are public school teachers who drive during the summer to supplement income. These are retirees. These are students. These are people you know in your communities who are just trying to get a little extra to be able to do the things they want to do. And the flexibility is incredibly important to them, because if it was a shift job,
right,
it would be unworkable for someone who's also holding down a full-time job someplace else. And there are cases where we've seen people who've been on the economic margins who've been able to utilize rideshare to get themselves into an apartment or to be able to finish school or what have you. And so it is a real, in many ways, another ladder. There's a lot of work we have to do to perfect this model, but I think the flexibility is something that our drivers consistently tell us that they value and want.
Sure. Now, it's hard to talk about transportation. I know this was a passion of yours in your previous role as well, without talking or at least touching on safety.
Sure.
Anytime there's a newer technology and there's something that's not as understandable as getting in your own car and driving yourself somewhere, what roles does Lyft play in terms of safety and in terms of thinking more broadly about safety?
Yeah, it's a great question. And look, as I talked about before, if you look at some of the indicators we would look at on road safety, things like impaired driving, we're seeing where we are present, we're seeing decreases in the incidence of those types of situations. At the same time, we have an ever-present effort and an ever-present responsibility as a company to be exacting about safety and to continue to be rigorous. You're talking to someone who imposed the largest fines on an automaker for a recall violation. And I had multiple situations in rail and air safety where I was similarly tough. So, the bottom line is that if you're in transportation in any sector, you're never going to be done obsessing about safety. And the best thing we can do is to continually be obsessive and to raise the bar and frankly set the bar, hopefully, for the industry.
Sure, that's interesting. Yeah, it's always an important part. One of the things that we've talked a little bit about in this group and in conferences in the past, a lot of mayors are excited about the advent of autonomous vehicles. When might we see autonomous vehicles, and what's Lyft doing in that space?
So we're on the road in Las Vegas. There are lots of pilots that are happening across the country. You could argue that they're on the road, but if the question is also like, when are they going to be ubiquitous? When am I going to see them in anywhere USA? I think we've got some time. I think it'll be accelerated to the extent that fleets are allowed to come into the marketplace as opposed to, sort of individual owners owning them. But, look back at like the seatbelt, for example. When the seatbelt was required by law, it took fully 25 years for the whole fleet of cars in the country to have seatbelts. And so we're talking about a longer term integration of AVs, but it's real, the technology is real, the technology is coming, and there are some examples of it on the road today.
Sure. One of the things, we do surveys in my city, the biggest problem in Rochester Hills, it's congestion. We're a ring community to Metro Detroit, and we've been sort of choked out in many instances. So what are some of the things that Lyft is doing to improve congestion in cities, and maybe speak about that for a couple?
Yeah, it's a very important issue. It's actually one of our great hopes is to be not only the solution, but to also be seen as the solution for this. And again, it gets back to the overall utilization of every incremental car on the road is very low. It's greater than 90%. And our aspiration is to get that number, lower. So if we can get to 80% idle, that will be an indicator of reduced congestion. It's actually a little counterintuitive. I used to tell people, like, if you add lanes, you're going to add traffic. You're going to add traffic, you're going to add congestion. So sometimes the solutions we think are going to be useful aren't. In our case, our goal is to create a situation where people don't have to own a car, and the cars they use are being utilized by other people. And so the more we are successful at doing that, the more we're going to see congestion reduced dramatically.
Sure. So last question, if you were to come back here 5 years from today in the same position, what would you be telling us you'd be most proud of? Where do you think we would be in sort of this advent of new technology meeting transportation?
I think the single most important thing is making quality of life better in our communities. And that means, you know, reducing congestion and hopefully people having lower travel times. It means having choices about how you get around. So we have on our app, for example, transit trips. You can see them. You don't pay for them through our app, but you can see when the bus is coming, and you can choose to take the bus rather than us. But we're still steps away from full integration of this, and I think an individual who wants to go to the doctor's office should be able to go on our app and pay for a seamless trip, and they should be able to take lots of different ways to get there, including our transit systems. And I also think that on this issue of equity, that we have democratized transportation in a real way. If you think about it, if you have to buy a car to get a job because you need the access, that's a tax on an individual who's trying to do better for themselves.
Right.
If we can reduce that cost and give that person a better throughway to work, that is going to mean a net reduction in inequality.
Yeah. Listen, interesting stuff. Appreciate your support of the conference. You're continuing to stand with mayors. These are a lot of really challenging issues. We all deal with mobility and transportation. We touched on a few of them. Thank you for your leadership. I know we're supposed to introduce you as Secretary Fox, but here you're always Mayor Fox. So congratulations. One more round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. Thank you. So before we conclude, we have an incredibly important discussion, one on HIV and AIDS and the epidemic that has occurred, and other really priority health issues. It's not hard to read the paper in the last 10 days or week to know that there are certainly continual scares about health, of course, including one that frankly occurred very close to me with my sister even this year. Well, the director of the CDC was originally scheduled to be with us today, but had a last-minute conflict, so we are most fortunate to be joined by a high-ranking administration official to discuss this key priority. Admiral Brett P. Garor, MD, was sworn in as the 16th Assistant Secretary for Health at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services on February 15th of 2018. Within HHS, the Assistant Secretary for Health leads development, public health policy, recommendations, and oversees several of the department's core public health offices, including the Office of the Surgeon General. His office leads many crucial national initiatives, including an historic new plan to end the HIV epidemic in America, the physical activity guidelines for Americans, the revised common rule, and more. The Admiral also serves as senior advisor to the Secretary for Opioid Policy, responsible for coordinating HHS efforts across the administration to fight America's opioid crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Admiral Garor. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. My colleague Bob Redfield sends his regrets, but he is dealing with other matters related to coronavirus. But I'm very, very happy to be here this morning as the Assistant Secretary. I'm also a pediatric ICU physician by training, and I just want to spend a few minutes, I know I'm between you and lunch, after a very long morning, talking about two initiatives which I lead for the Department of Health and Human Services. That is the Ending HIV Initiative, which is a presidential initiative, as well as the overall efforts to combat the opioid and substance use epidemics within the country. So I'm just going to give a few minutes on either to give you both, to give you a quick overview of where we are. So many people don't know, but there are 40,000 new cases of HIV every year in the United States. I was really shocked by that number, and I couldn't understand when I was getting ready for this position, why was there still 40,000 new cases of HIV in this country every year after a decade of progress? And the answer simply was that no one made the decision to not have 40,000 new cases a year in this country, because we really have all the tools, the right timing, the new medications, the models of care to stop this. So last year, the President announced in the State of the Union a truly historic initiative to end HIV within the United States. So why is this so very important to do now, and why is the time right? First of all, and I'll show you the map, 1/2 of those 40,000 cases occur in only 47 jurisdictions, counties or parishes, Washington, D.C. and San Juan. That's 50% of cases. So we don't need to go to 3,000 different counties. Secondly, we have good therapy. When I was starting in practice, there was no therapy. Then it was 30 pills a day, every 4 hours, 8 hours, highly toxic. Now there are about 10 choices of 1 pill per day that can completely eliminate the detectable virus within the bloodstream, not toxic whatsoever, and if the virus is undetectable, you cannot transmit it sexually. Pre-exposure prophylaxis, or called PrEP, highly effective, up to 99% in preventing sexual transmission of HIV. Didn't have that 20 years ago, we have it now. And finally, we have good models of care, like the Ryan White program, that has shown that even in the most disenfranchised members of our society, who have huge adverse social determinants of health, we can achieve rates of viral suppression, that number of 0 that you can detect in the bloodstream, far in excess of what the average is in the United States. So these dots are our 48 counties. Many of you may be mayors or work in these counties, but we also wanted to target states that are predominantly or have a large rural population that have a high burden. So what you see here are the 48 jurisdictions in the 7 states. A principal, meaning myself, Bob Redfield, or Tony Fauci, have now personally visited about 80% of those jurisdictions to listen. And what did we hear? What we heard from those jurisdictions is, number one, it's very important to have access within the community where people live and in the sub-communities where people live. You can't expect people to come to a tertiary center. You have to reach people and meet them where they are. We have to minimize stigma across the board. There's stigma that differs in many parts of the country, but there's still high stigma to getting tested and getting treated. Coordination of care, very important. We don't want a person with HIV to get HIV care here, but their blood pressure somewhere else and other things. It has to be coordinated in an integrated fashion. Very important to work with community-based organizations. Those are the people who can really reach those who are not reachable or have not been reached by the traditional methods. And finally, social determinants. If you don't have a home, if you don't have a job, if you don't have education, it's going to be very hard for you to comply with your medications and achieve viral suppression. Diagnosis is very important. This is shocking to me as well. 1 out of 2 people with HIV have had the virus at least 3 years before diagnosis. That means their health is deteriorating and they're able to transmit the virus to others that they have sexual contact or share needles, etc. 1 in 4 people have had the virus at least 7 years before they get diagnosed. 1 in 5 people show up with advanced AIDS like pneumocystis pneumonia. And very importantly, and shocking to me as a healthcare provider, 7 in 10 people with HIV saw a healthcare provider in the previous 12 months but were failed to be diagnosed. So the bottom line is we have to do a much better job of diagnosing, but this is easy to do. There are multiple tests, point-of-care tests, if we could reach the population we need. So our goal is a 75% reduction in new HIV cases within 5 years, 90% within 10 years, and this is absolutely doable. We don't need a miracle. We just need to implement what we have right now. And I want to highlight the prevention just so that you know. If you have Medicaid, you're really well covered for PrEP in general. If you have private insurance, you are. If you have no insurance, you're in really difficult trouble because it can cost up to $2,000 a month. So I want to make sure you know that we got up to 2 doses for up to 200,000 people who are uninsured completely free as a donation from Gilead. We're running that program. So if you have people in the gap, if you're not an expansion state or have other gaps, without insurance, you can get PrEP for free, 0 cost, including 0 cost for mail order. We jump-started this with $33 million in 2019, and we just got $291 million in extra funding. This is going to go to your communities, those primary communities. The fiscal year 21 budget is not out yet, but again, very generous support to move this forward. So this is a big deal. If you have questions, contact my office. Our website is hiv.gov, which will have all the information that you need. I was supposed to have 10 minutes, it gave me 6, so I'm going to take 2 or 3 minutes to do opioids. I think all of you know that the substance use and overdose crisis is the most daunting and complex problem we have in this country right now. I hate to give comparisons, but look at combat deaths, but in the last 18 years, we've had almost 775,000 deaths from drug overdoses, not counting alcohol. This is illegal drugs like or prescription opioids being misused. Most of those are opioids. I think you all have probably heard by this time and are hopefully benefiting from our 5-point strategy, better addiction prevention and treatment and recovery services. The administration is appropriately viewing this as a public health crisis. Yes, we need enforcement of transnational cartels who are bringing drugs in, but you cannot arrest your way out of this. We have to prevent and we have to treat. It's a chronic brain disease and we're treating it as such. Better data. The CDC has pumped a lot of money into jurisdictions to understand what are the causes of death, to support PDMPs so we know prescribing is better. Better pain management. 50 million people in the US have chronic pain. 20 million have debilitating pain. We will never solve drug overdose crisis or opioid use crisis if we don't have better pain management. Overdose reversing drugs like naloxone, we know that's very important to give a person a second chance. And of course, better research. Now billions of dollars of extra research from the NIH. Most of you have really seen the benefits by the grants that are targeted to the states. The state opioid response grants and other grants. So even from 2016, just in HHS, there's been over $9 billion in grants. Most of those are given to the states to allow local communities to do what they need for those communities. Very importantly, I will say the president is very involved in this. I meet with the president regularly. You know that addiction, substance use disorders is something very close to him, very personal to him, and he is personally engaged and very understanding of where we are. As a result, and the final data will come out in a couple of weeks, but the preliminary data show that in 2018, we've had the first decrease in overdose deaths year to year in about 25 years. Nobody is spiking the football, doing the victory dance, but it does show that everyone's efforts can make a dent into this. And if you do academic projections, we should have had about 100,000 deaths in 2018 if there hadn't been intervention at multiple levels. So the last two things I'll say is we're doing well, but I'm very nervous. And the reason I'm nervous is methamphetamine is actually soaring throughout the country. Starting in the West Coast, now centrally, now starting to hit the East Coast. These are industrial-produced methamphetamines, fundamentally different drugs. They don't respond to MAT. They're very, very highly addictive. They're dirt cheap and 100% pure. And transnational organizations are targeting communities, addicting a whole new generation of methamphetamine, and we have to be on this as aggressively as we can. And the state opioid response grants by the president, by us, by Congress, this year they will now be widened so states can use those for methamphetamines, not just opioids. There was not that flexibility to use what's really affecting your community. Now that's going to be there. So the last slide is what we're doing now. Again, in addition to all those grants, we're really trying to transition to a stable framework. You see many things about reimbursement, to improve reimbursement for providers, to bundle payments, to fund opioid treatment programs, so we can fill the gaps that you're filling by grants with sustainable programs through Medicaid, Medicare, and other programs. Also the workforce. We are horribly short of behavioral health providers at every level, social workers, community health workers, psychiatrists, and of course trying to get the right delivery system. This is 8 minutes on two of the most important problems we face in our country, but I wanted to give you a general overview and more importantly so you know who I am. If you have any questions about these, you need more information, that's my contact. You can follow me on Twitter. That's my general mailbox, and we will be back to you within 24 hours with the information you need. Thanks so much. I appreciate you sticking it out, and have a great day.
Thank you so much, Admiral. We appreciate it. We appreciate you adjusting your schedule, and for all of you as well. Listen, this is the last time we will be together here for this this conference. I just want to go over a couple logistic notes here as we get ready to leave. Ultimately, still the buses will leave at 1 p.m. to head to the White House. You can pick up boxed lunches in the Congressional Room on your way to those best practice meetings that are underway now, probably. We mentioned we'll be at the White House leaving at 1, and that bus will leave sharp. That is a tight time frame. If you'll indulge me for 1 second, let's give a big round of applause to Tom Cochran and the staff of the United States Conference of Mayors. I also want to thank Mayors Fisher, Mayors Whaley, Mayors Benjamin and Couts for their leadership of this organization. I want to thank Mayor Bowser and her staff for setting up so much of the things, including the event last night. Thank all of our sponsors and our business council. Let's give a round of applause to the Capitol Hilton staff. To all the new members who are here. And finally, I want to ask Maria and Tom to come up. They are my right hands. You have no idea how much work is done on their behalf to make me look halfway decent. Maria is my chief of staff. Tom is my senior advisor. Would you please give them a round of applause as well, because they've worked very hard. I mean, give them a round of applause, but not bigger than you applauded for me. That was awkward. Just remind you all to take this, live this, breathe this. Let anyone who has influence know how important these policies and practices are for mayors. And as we move forward, this 2020 vision for America and call to action is our Bible into this presidential year. Thank you all for joining us. We will adjourn, and we'll see you out on the buses at 1 o'clock. Have a great morning.